Go right ahead.
Mr. Marchionne, I'm Dale Molnar from CBC News in Windsor. Just want to know, we're all wondering if you have another product planned for the Windsor assembly plant, and if so, if that's going to be a crossover vehicle.
If there is going to be one, it is going to be a crossover.
Can you tell us if there is?
I don't know yet. I think we're working our way through the economics of that case right now. So the car is designed, we know what it looks like. We're just trying to find out whether we can sell enough. But obviously it shares the architecture with a minivan, so. We'll let you know as soon as we find out. We're still busy trying to launch the minivan now. Let's not worry about the second car.
Jerry Anderson, WTOL in Toledo.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing very well, and yourself?
I'm quite well, thank you, sir. Are there any circumstances under which the next generation Wrangler will be built in Toledo?
Could, you mean? Are there any
Are
circumstances?
there circumstances under which this vehicle, the next generation Wrangler, will be built in Toledo?
Could be built in Toledo. The short answer to your question is that if the economic differences that we're facing between the alternative production location in Toledo were to go away, then I think we would find no reason not to continue to produce the Wrangler in Toledo. But there are significant differences in the capital costs required by a Toledo allocation of the car, which is really the fundamental reason. I made the comment earlier with the press. There was somebody from Toledo who asked me how I viewed this issue. I think it's, well, last year we sold 1,017,019 Jeeps. Over half of them were produced by the workforce in Toledo. And they have consistently overperformed. I mean, there's not been a single instance where we have made demands for additional production out of Toledo that went unmet. So they've twisted into a pretzel, working holidays, working shutdown periods to try and get us there. And I think this organization owes them a lot. I think I understand this issue. That's why even if in the event that the Wrangler were not to go to Toledo, we would find alternative products for them to produce. So it's not an issue that will impact headcount or the future livelihood of our people. But the Wrangler issue is a very painful issue because the amount of money involved here, the differences are large. And it doesn't matter what I do, it's almost impossible. I know it's impossible for me alone to make it go away. And they're large. They cannot be ignored. So we'd have to find a solution that somehow alleviates the cost burden of that plant in some fashion going forward. And I don't, and certainly it cannot, and I can tell you that now, it cannot come out of the wage structure of our people in Toledo. So I would never ask for a concession from them on this issue, ever. And I think it's unfair. So it has to come from other parts of the infrastructure, whether it's the city or the state, but we would have to find ways in which we could make up that difference. It may take a long time to make up that difference, but we would have to have the confirmation of the fact that for a prolonged period of time, the cost structure of Toledo will be substantially lower than it is anywhere else. So since it can't come out of labor and it can't come out of the car because the car is what it is, then it has to come from the surroundings, whatever that may be, whether it's the city or the state. But we'd have to find concessions. We'd have to find a package of economic incentives that will make the issue go away. And I'm not trying to throw the ball into somebody else's yard here and saying, look, it's your problem, you need to come up with the answer. I've been as open as I can possibly be with both the mayor and the governor on this issue. And I'm going to meet him again, hopefully in the next 30 days. But, and I'll make the point known to them, but I think it is important that we recognize that there's a limit to the amount of economic inefficiency that the FCA or Fiat Chrysler can endure in connection with this investment. It's not a reflection on Toledo. It's just that it's a consequence of a set of choices that were made a long time ago in connection with the production of the current Wrangler. Right? I mean, there's a supplier park that operates around the plant. There were technical choices that were made in connection with that architecture, the way in which the car is assembled, painted. And so we're wearing the results of those choices. To make those choices irrelevant going forward, it's going to require money. And so we're really at the end of an economic discussion. I mean, we need to make that problem go away. If we can't, I think we need to look at a world outside of Wrangler, whatever that is. But having said this, I have every intention of turning myself into a pretzel to try and make the problem go away. But as I get older, I get less capable of turning myself into a pretzel. I suffer the pain a lot more than I would have when I was 30.
Morning, Mr. Marchionne. Pete Langell from CKLW Windsor. More on the minivan plant, sorry.
Yeah.
So we understand that you're about to embark on the transition of the plant, and the current generation will be still manufactured after that's completed for some time. How long?
Where's Reed? If it was Reed, we manufacture until 2,250. There are technical reasons why that car cannot be sold for a much longer period of time than the current time. It just, there are regulations that are coming into effect in 2017. They're going to restrict, or are either going to require a substantial amount of investment into the old architecture to make the problem go away, or they're just not saleable. And so that, plus the combination of some of the inherent inefficiency of the architecture and the powertrain will make the car just not square the number. So we'll try and keep it alive as long as we can.
Do you have a final design for the next generation?
Oh, it's done, yes. We're tooling up now. I mean, it's just, the horse left the barn. I mean, the car is, there are bodies that are meandering around Auburn Hills out of the pilot plant. It's just, the carcasses are visible.
So when will we see it?
You'll see it at the show in January 16.
Philippe Leblanc from Radio-Canada, right here. Still about Windsor, it doesn't seem very reassuring to the people of Windsor. How important is this plant going forward for FCA?
$2 billion worth of relevance. I don't know whether, maybe it's inconsequential money to you, but we have put in $2 billion between engineering and development and plant infrastructure to build this van. I think it's the single largest Canadian investment that's been made in the auto sector in the last 10 years. Is it reassuring now?
Lisa Guyton from 13 ABC in Toledo. How are you, Mr. Marchionne?
Well,
Obviously, you said a lot has to happen before a final decision is made on the production of the next generation Wrangler. Do you have any kind of a timetable yet? Obviously, time does come into play. You also spoke about the workforce. How much of a role will their productivity and their dedication play in this decision, if any?
the car is due out in 17. So if you work your dates back from that date, you're going to have to call the marker within the second quarter of this year. You can't wait any longer. I said this before, I think we owe a lot to the workforce in Toledo. I've been public on this before, I reiterate the point. I know that they've done exceptional things to make that car what it is today. Yeah, it's going to play a role. Sure it is, but the number is so large that unaided, unsupported, there's just no way that it could ever happen. So there has to be something that comes to the table. It's just,
Is there a possibility of something being on the table with the city or the state
don't
at this
know.
point?
Let me have the meetings. It's a tall order, so. Right.
Sonari Glenton with NPR. The U.S. economy almost took down Chrysler. It's been 5 years since the bailout. Could you talk about that? And then how much of a worry is the European economy to FCA? And how do you mitigate those hazards?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the first question.
Oh, I just wonder what you're thinking 5 years after the bailout. This show.
It's almost 6 years. June 10th this year will be the 6th year. Look, a lot has happened. I think all the prognostications that people had in place back in '09 about the recovery of the auto industry have proved right. You know, it was an intervention that has a good outcome. I mean, people can spend time and determine how much did the bailout ultimately cost taxpayers. The reality is that when you come into the show today and you compare it to what we saw in January of '09 or even January of '10, you are looking at two completely different worlds. Right? You've got an industry which is in relatively decent shape. I mean, all of us are making some money making cars. The question is whether we're making enough. But nobody's talking about restructuring of the industry. Nobody's talking about taking capacity down. I think we have seen incredibly disciplined behavior in the marketplace by all the players, not just the Detroit Three. And I think we have seen both bailout candidates and the one that wasn't bailed out perform incredibly well out of the city. And so if I had to sort of assign it a grade for the way in which we've performed, I think we deserve some level of A, whether it's an A minus, an A, or an A plus. I'm not sure. I'll leave it to you to decide whether we need to qualify the A, but I think we've done well. And I think we have, I'm talking about Chrysler at least, we took our obligation that we had with taxpayers pretty seriously. We extinguished that liability back in May of 2011, even less than 2 years after the money was lent. So there's been incredibly rapid progress to come out of the doghouse, and I think we are out of the doghouse. Whether we're absolutely free of fleas or not is something that I still think we have some warts. The amount of restructuring that went on was pretty severe. We still have some areas of massive intervention. We need to do a lot more work on powertrains and get this industry moved in the right direction. But I think the fundamentals are solid, and I'm actually incredibly optimistic about what the next few years will bring. We are much better competitors than we have ever been, and that's a great sign.